now you should have done the little game. Chances are you survived. That's the criticism students always level against that game, is that there aren't enough opportunities for bad things happening to them compared to what they read about in the textbook and the additional readings. So I mentioned the impact of the Mongols on the Silk Roads in my previous video. And this picture on the left is a very rough map of the territory that the Mongols gained. So through conquest, they built a huge empire. And as you can see, it stretches all the way from the Black Sea in the west to the Pacific Ocean in the east. It's like the largest the world has ever seen. Remember too that although we're looking at this from a different perspective now, because we've not really, we've not talked about Asia at all, the Black Sea is near Constantinople, so it abuts the Byzantines. The Mongols were clever, they were really disciplined, and they attacked on horseback, as this contemporary image on the right shows. They tore through the Muslim world. The Christians did not mind this. They hear reports of it and they're like, oh well, too bad. Some of the Mongols were Christian, a type of Christian called Nestorians, and I'm pretty sure we mentioned them briefly when we talked about heresy before. So they are therefore to the Catholic Church, a heretical branch of Christianity, but it's amazing how the popes can put this behind them if it means taking down the Muslims. But this was a minority within the Mongols. The Great Khan, their leader, was not a Nestorian Christian. Unlike what's happening in the Islamic world and within the Western world with Crusaders, religion is very much a side issue to the Mongols, especially compared to the big business of conquering. They really have very little interest in religion and religious divides. They originally achieved unity under the famous Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan, and they absorb other peoples. One of them, the Tatars, left its name to the conqueror. So in China, they were known as the Tartars. The conquest was then continued by Chinggis Khan's descendants. They made it to the Crusader states' doorstep when they defeated the Khwarezmians, or the Khwarezmians, depending on what source you're reading. There were really bad massacres that accompanied the conquest. So the news of these bloody and terrifying massacres reached Asian, Muslim and Western ears. But after this expansion period, the empire was provided with a structure that gave it a lot of security that had previously not existed. So this meant that merchants from both the West and the East could frequent the Silk Road routes between India, China, and the West, and also because they weren't very interested in religion, missionaries could ply these routes as well. So the tolerance of the first Genghis Khanids, so called his descendants who were leaders, was particularly favourable to Christians. So the Latin Church liked the idea of it. They liked the idea of expanding their influence. But Islam won over the Khans of Persia from 1295, and in the 14th century, the Golden Horde as well. So over time, more people in this grey area converted to Islam. So, but the establishment of the Mongol Empire, it made possible direct contact between civilizations separated by thousands of miles, and it enabled travellers to move much more freely, gather a lot more knowledge, and so it had a massive impact on later discoveries. Reading the first interpretations of the Mongols by Western Europeans, it's kind of entertaining, considered with 2020 hindsight. They know that there were, back in the early days of Christianity, that there were missionaries out in the East, so they've an idea that there might be sort of like Christians out there that they've lost contact with, and indeed, we had to cut it because of the changes to the semester, but we would have learned more about Ethiopia had we had that extra class, and that is another Christian society that technically they consider heretics, but that they know they've lost contact with since the early days of Christianity. So they hear that there are some Christians out there and they're on the move and they're defeating the Muslims, and they get very confused with the biblical King David, which Genghis Khan is definitely not. So we also get these development of stories about a guy called Prester John, who's this mythical king of the Indies, and kind of aligns with King David, and therefore they think it's Genghis Khan. People hope that when they hear about the Mongols, that this is this mythical Prester John character rocking up in the east. What they're really hoping for is that they're going to come and help the Crusaders. And so there's all these fairly delusional ideas of sort of squashing the Muslim world from both west and from east, and thus re-establishing the Crusader states. In fact, I've given you a hint there, because the next question is going to be, what is the impact of the Mongols on the Crusades? And Madden argues that it's pretty slight, but I disagree. I think we can see quite a few impacts on the Crusades. Certainly, you know, they are looking east, and we tend to think of Westerners thinking that anywhere that they don't have consistent contact with is kind of being here. Be monsters. Also, we're talking about a very long period of time. We're talking about hundreds of years, so I'm making generalizations as well. Okay, so I am going to leave the video right here and let you write in the forum, and then there's going to be another video which is much longer, and I'm going to start off with the Mongols and then move on to biological and technological exchange. So that is going to be a longer video for you to sit down and prepare for.